I just want to do a quick sort of overview of these fermenting bins that I'm making. This is one of the 25-litre containers. They hold concentrated car wash used in hand car washes for their pressure washes, so it's like a kind of really sort of degreasing foam. It's water soluble because obviously in a car wash they're using quite large quantities of that, so it has to be able to be diluted and go down the drains. When I get these containers, there's always a little tiny bit of residue. I give them a really good wash out first, and what I do is if I'm going to wash the car, I reuse I use it up and then make sure it's running through so there's no suds left. And yeah, they're a very good container. They're high density polyethylene, and yeah, they're quite a thick wall, so I've used them. I've buried them in the ground as worm bins as well. Yeah, they're very good, and they're a waste product, so there's no cost to actually picking these up, just a little bit of time to prepare them and make the containers. One thing, I haven't got a lid here, but what I've in other videos I use this actual fitting. I use I think it's about 16 and 17 millimeters or something like that. I'd have to update the description just to confirm. But I use a hole saw, drill through around the outside, leave a little flange around the edge, a little collar, and then I can thread that through the container. And so I'm using the bulk of the container. I cut it off just above this seam here, or this mould line, and then I reuse that. And then the top bit, because it's high density polyethylene, it's the same material as milk bottles, so I wash that out also. Use the bucket as I cut it down as a container to wash it in, and then put that into the domestic household recycling. So here's one of the bins. I've started to modify this one, and I've numbered these up as well. I'm going to do about half a dozen of these just as a kind of experiment. I've got the 4 holes in there. My other video, part 1 and part 2, show how I cut these down using a jig and an oscillating saw. So what I've done here, the holes that I use to hold the fixture on to cut these down, I use that as a pilot hole to drill the holes for these bottle top fittings. This isn't the right one. I need to get some more bottles or acquire some more empty bottles and just use that. And what I've done here as well on this one, I've used, this is sold on eBay. I think it's about £2.30 a metre. It's quite good material. It's a rubber, and it's used as sort of interior door trim on vans and cars, and I haven't really seen it for a while. It seems to be like sort of 60s, 70s cars had that kind of stuff. Modern cars seem to use more of a bespoke kind of moulded extrusion rubber. This is quite hard, and it's got a sort of slight texture to it as well. But what it's quite nice is it gives a bit more rigidity to the top of the container, and it makes a nice tight fitting onto the lid as well. I use the jig, so when I cut these off it's nice and square, so you've got a nice straight edge for the lid to fit into. I'll do a little video of each little part of this as well. So this is one of the lids. This is made out of buffalo board. If you're not familiar with buffalo board, it's the kind of stuff they use. It's got a sort of non-slip textured surface for floorboards in trailers, and I don't know if you go like the more sort of like festivals where they have the slightly more upmarket kind of portaloos, they have like steps and things, they might be made from this stuff as well. It's actually a marine birch plywood, and it's got a phenolic resin coating, like a surface sort of film on it. The only thing is you have to seal the edges, so there's a proprietary kind of water-based sealant that's quite sort of soaks into that grain and helps seal the material. Obviously for this sort of thing they're not going to be outdoors. I'm outdoors at the moment, but these are going to be in a shed where I'm composting with the worms. So what I've done on here, I've made a template fixture so I can route round the edge, so that follows a ball bearing, guides that round, and then I've got a sort of what do you call it, it's like a template pattern following kind of bush that fits onto the bottom of the router, and then that routes the outside as well. So I've got 2 routers. I keep them set up. One sets up to cut the rebate, and the other one cuts the profile. I screw this down with a centre hole to a piece of sort of sacrificial material, so I route right the way through, and then that means when it's cut through you don't get a nasty kind of edge on there. It doesn't splinter out any of the plywood. It's going to be quite hard to do this one hand, so I'll put the phone down for a minute. there's no material in this, the bin sort of sprung out a little bit, but once it's loaded up, it's much easier. Hang on, let's put the phone down. So it snaps into place like so. I number these up, I keep a kind of log just so I know what materials have gone in, what dates have gone in, if there's anything I'm particularly concerned about, or weeds, roots or things like that, or if I want to do an experiment. And you can see, you can almost pick that up from the lid, so it's a nice tight fit. It took a few trials just to make templates to cut the right sort of pattern, and in the end I just laser cut that. I work in a school, so I've got access to a laser cutter, which is really interesting. So that's the lid. I'm not entirely sure if this is overkill or if it's a requirement or if it's a sort of benefit or detriment really, but what I've done here, I've used another fitting in the base, and I've used a rubber washer around that, and then that's threaded in. I might put a little bit of silicone or something just to sort of seal it in. And this fitting here is 21.5mm solvent well PVC overflow pipe, and that's sort of, so it's a running fit in there. It's not a tight fit, but it's pretty perfect really. So that fits into the bottom, so you've got a little spigot sticking out for the drain.